Hello, my fellow estimator. This is for CET226 Estimating, Stark State College. And I am actually posting this video as a follow-up with your midterm project. And on Blackboard, pretty much, I hope all of you actually have gone this far, and here is the final, project or estimate. You need to drop it in here. Here is the bit form. It caught my attention that in your homework number 5, to my surprise, some of you actually did not know where the bit form is, and it was part of your assignment. It's the last page in the assignment. So it's the same in here. However, I just created one. So I opened this document and deleted all the pages except the last page, which is basically your bid form. So this is for your convenience. Please make sure that you include that. You drop your Excel sheet and your bid form, which is a Word document. And here is the Excel sheet here that you have used. And if you It's very simple, but try to make sure you actually double check in here. If you don't use all those rows, come in and delete as much as you like. And basically that way, just like we did at the beginning of the semester, if you need more rows, remember the rule was don't start in the top and don't start in the bottom. Come in the middle somewhere in here and basically insert rows. And all you have to do is come in here and highlight these basically cells. You can go across, it doesn't hurt, and just do it that way. And that way, all will be actually included, and all of this will be included. And like I said, just don't start at the top of these rows, and you can add as many as you like and delete as much as you don't need, if you can do that. Also, when you are done, a lot of you actually did not know that do that, but that's okay. There was no deductions, but highlight all your work and stop, of course, the one row below it and go to data and go with the sort. And I want you to sort with column A. So that would sort them actually by division and by item number. So that will make it easier to follow. I had to do that for at least half of you that submitted, in homework number 5. Again, I know that we're trying to adjust and whatnot, and some of you might not be as familiar, with these kind of details with Excel. And basically just say okay, and it will sort it, by column A. Again, don't highlight the whole thing, just highlight the first item in here and make sure you include your location and the notes, if you added any notes, and kind of like that. Okay, so with that said, let's actually get to our homework. So, I'm sorry, our midterm project. So here's the project, and I already have it open. So in here, again, it's been, a week or so, so, most of you probably have already, read this, and I hope you had. And if you have not had the chance while you were still on campus to purchase these blueprints, there's multiple copies I have in here. The PDF, these are the original blueprints, and they were scanned, in our scanner. They're size B, so they're actually a little bit more than what, the 11 by 17. These are the original. It's a cleaner set. That's the one I have open. And pretty much actually it is in here. Here it is. And here's your site plan. And for reference, let's start with this reference in here, that this is an existing building. You don't have to worry about it. It's 20 foot high, and we are going to add a 75 by 75 addition that is 24 feet high. This is the north arrow. So in your notes or your locations, or even with communications with me between now and the due date, let's actually use some directions. So you can say, oh, on the east wall, so this will be the east wall. And so in here, so that would be the east wall. And this will be the north wall. Again, this is 24 feet high. This is 24 feet high. And this is 24 feet high. Now, on the south wall, even though it's existing, but it's only 20 feet high. So you still need to raise it on top of the existing. And we'll get to that here in the detail. Another 4 feet. So make sure you catch this part of the masonry here, that you still need to add that part. This is the loading dock, which is, I know it's a little bit complicated, but when you think about it and when you really read more the details, it's not that bad. And you can, this is of course, to the details. Here is the foundation. One of the most common questions I usually get is like, well, what's the size of the building? We have two sizes here. We have one that says 75 foot 6 inches and 70 by 75 foot 3 inches. And then we have our building here, or the other blueprints or the other plan, it says 75 by 75. Well, the building itself, the walls are 75 from the existing to the end of the new, 75 feet. And here the same thing, 75 feet. And here is 75 feet. What you see here in the previous sheet is your footings. The footings, as you can see from the details here, are a little bit different than what we have done in the class and what is actually nowadays in modern construction is done. They are 1 foot 6 inches wide by 2 feet 4 inches high. Here they're showing you it's 3 feet. And basically, that includes an 8 inches masonry. So take 8 inches out of the 3. That leaves you with 2 foot 4 inches. All of the footings of the building are the same size. What changes actually is the depth of them. And that depth difference will be made up by adding more block below the ground. So in here, for example, this one here to show you a section B. And section B in here, this is section B right here. And in here, the floor is only 8, is actually almost flush. It is flush with the finished floor. And the footings is only 8 inches here. The top of it is 8 inches below the ground. However, in C, then C here, which is this one here, it's actually 2 feet below the ground. 1, 2, 3 blocks. 3 times 8 inches is 24 inches. But the footing still remains the same. So the block difference here, all the footings are 3 feet below the ground, below the grade, but difference is how much it is below finished floor. Like in here, the finished floor is level with the grade, but in here, the finished floor is not level with the grade. So instead of making the footings actually bigger, which is more expensive, and they actually just add more blocks. So all the footings of the building, mark that down, are the same size, 1 foot 6 wide by 2 foot 4 inches deep or high. And they have 2 number 4 continuous. That's what this one here. And incidentally, by the way, I know that probably if you purchased the actual prints from the from the bookstore, it might be a little bit sometimes hard to read. So use the digital copy here from Blackboard, and you can zoom on it and try to do your best. And if you really can't make it up, just send me an email and I will actually be glad to answer you. Also, speaking of which, see if you don't send me just every single item, send me an email. Try to accumulate a few questions together, maybe 2 or 3 questions, and then send it to me, and I'll be glad to respond to you promptly and explain to you what that means. These were done on board by hand, and we used to use a lot of abbreviation, in these days, and some of them even are not even valid or or more like not really appropriate, like CB. What is CB? It's concrete block. Nobody uses that actual abbreviations or that terminology. It is CMU. That's the proper kind of like, if you remember from my other lectures, footings and footers. Well, the proper designation is CMU, but nonetheless, it is CMU. So it's 12 inches CMU. And going back to the footings, so the footings actually are 6 inches larger than the walls. All the walls are 12 inches on the exterior of the building, and therefore the footing actually, this much here, there's 3 inches in here and 3 inches on the inside. That's why you see here that the building is 75, not the building, but out of the footing is 75 foot 6 inches, 3 inches on one side and 3 inches on this other side. In here, on the east wall and the west wall in here, it is 75 foot 3 inches, because this is an existing and the footings and the block will stop in here. So there's only 3 inches on this wall in here. That's why it is 75 foot 3 inches. So that kind of like sets it, straight. Now, these are thickened slab. Yes, they are footings. There will be actually concrete block wall, CMU on here and on here. And there's a detail, which is detail A. And here's the detail A, is basically that we have 6 inches concrete slab floors, but then at these locations, they thickened it another 6 inches. So this actually, in reality, they will be probably done at the same time. But for your estimation, this will be part of a slab, SOG, slab on grade. By the way, this is 4 inches granule material, gravel. And in here, that will be a footing that is 1 foot wide by 6 inches, thick or deep. These are the locations for these partitions, interior partitions walls. And that's what these mean in here. So if I go to the next page, in here, let's talk about the actual building. The building itself, like I said, it is 75 from the existing to here on the west wall, and then 75 on the north wall. This is the north wall, and 75 here on the east wall. The east and the north consist of 8 inches CMU plus 4 inches brick. The west wall and this middle wall consist of only 12 inches, basically full thickness, 12 inches CMU. This little partition, as you can see here, is 8 inches CMU, and it's only about 10 feet high. You can check the section that actually is here, and here it is. This is actually 10 feet from the finished floor. This is the 8 inches CB concrete block CMU. And then on top of that one, we will have 8 inches precast concrete planks. And these are actually available also in the estimating. Don't get hung up on the brand. This is a brand, Spancrete Series 8408 or 0B, but basically any 8 inches precast planks would do. And that's the part that actually would be in here. This is a load-bearing wall. This is a non-load-bearing wall. It's a 12 inches just partition. Now, the building itself, how it is actually spanning, is spanning by the roof part, is they're splitting it almost in half in here. And we have this main beam in here. And then there's a post, a pillar, a column, and there is a beam in here. And of course, where do I get that information from? Well, I can get that from the roof framing plan, which is in here. That's an 8 inches standard pipe column. This is a W24 by 68. This is a wide flange beam, 24 inches deep, 2 feet deep, 24 inches by 68, pounds per linear feet. And these are the joists, and they are called for 20H7 at 5 foot on center with the bracing. Now, The bracing part, if you, that's why I hope you got that message, is I posted a copy of our class practice, phase A and phase B, which included estimating open web joists. The item in the means book is all inclusive. So you don't have to actually estimate the bracing. When you look at and read the description of these open web joists, it's all inclusive, that they include all these bracings. However, it does not include the bearing parts, and I give you that detail in here. I give you that detail in the handout itself, in the assignment itself. It talks about, what actually are the bearing plates. And here's the 22 gauge, inch and a half, 22 gauge, decking. And in here are the bearing plates, the masonry bearing plates, 4 by 1/4 by 8, typical. Of course, I gave you a change for that, so you'll be able to easily find it, which is very same that we did actually in the example. We did estimate the same as this one here. So going back to my handout in here, let's start from the beginning. Is we have all of these general requirements. That means you have to do mobilization and the project, administration. And here's how much you're gonna put for the cost per week for your superintendent. You have to have a rented office with supplies. You don't have to provide temporary power or heat. This is from the existing building, so don't worry about it. You still need to put in some kind of expenses for temporary cell phones and a trash dumpster. And I'm giving you how much to put in for the trash dumpsters. Use $650 for every 2 weeks, bi-weekly. And the toilet, use $300 per month, so we'll be all consistent. But you still have to add, on top of all of that, a weekly cleanup and a final cleanup. Remember that this is actually going to be 3 months, 13 weeks. So you don't have to guess, is 3 months 12 weeks, or 3 months, is it 12 and a half, or 13, or just basically, if an item calls for months, use 3. If an item calls for weeks, use 13 weeks. So we'll be all consistent. You need to do a layout for the building, and it's going to take half a day for a 2-man surveying crew. Assume only fine grading. That means there is no cut and fill. There is actually topography, and as I showed you here just briefly in the building section, and I'm sorry, in the details of the section here of the foundation, that how it actually, the grade varies. The east wall is much higher, the ground is much lower than the west wall. So the west wall here, the ground is almost level with the finished floor, and then starts sloping down in here to this one here. Of course, you can look at it here and study, the topography. This is the high part, 1157, 1158, 1159, 58, 57. So it's basically high and it goes down low. That's why in here, when we look at the section, there is more masonry on the east wall below the finished floor till you hit your footings. So there is extra, only 1 block on the west wall beyond the 24 feet high. This one here, it actually steps, down. So you have to figure out that length there. It shows it to you in the elevations of the building, where actually that stepping is all happening. So in here, here's the east wall. There is no stepping in the east wall. It's all the same. And basically here, but here's that north wall. There's 24 feet and it steps down. So there's more block from here to the end of it here. This is the north wall, and here, and basically the finished floor and so forth. So this is actually the same, only 1 block in here, but then it adds more. And on the east wall, there's actually much more than that. This is basically where the finished floor is, and here's that one there. And of course, how do you know what that one is? Of course, you go back to here. Here's that west wall. There's only 1 block. And here's that east wall. And in here, sorry, this is the north wall, part of the north wall. C is the north wall. 1, 2, 3 courses below the finished grade. And this one here is actually is the east wall. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 courses added on top. Here from this level to the top is basically 24 feet, and then you add, this course's extra block. And in the east wall, 1, 2, 3 has brick, and then the last one on the north wall, you have 1 without brick and 2 courses with brick, and then on the west wall, there is no brick whatsoever. So back to our discussion here, and we need to do the fine grading. Only needed, no cut and fill. Like I said, there is actually sloping, but don't worry about cut and fill, just fine grading underneath the slab. They did not call for 6 mil vapor retarder, but it's required, it's a code. You need to include 2 dock bumpers, and here's the specification or the size for them: 6 inches thick by 10 inches high, and they are 36 inches long. There's 2 of them where the dock actually is. And there is actually an apparatus here. It's called a loading dock leveler. Here's the specifications for it. This one actually goes in, if you're not familiar with that actually part there, this one goes into this kind of like a cavity here. And, it is 6 by 6. I just called it for 6 by 6 to make it simplified, and you can be able to find it. And in here is basically where it goes. And then in here's that dock, that's actually leveled. This dock actually will have also foundation block, and a footing extra beyond the building, and it will have a concrete slab in here, and there's extra angles to protect it. And you need to look at the details and come up with those angles. We already priced stuff like that in the building, in here. So here's a section through the dock area. That's where the leveler is. It's about 2 feet, 1 foot 11.5 inches, cavity there. This cavity, of course, this is not the foundation, but this here is a section actually through this part in here. So this is the part that had that section in, so there's, going down and creating kind of like a cavity to be able to install, that dock leveler. And we need to, of course, all the exterior doors, and here are the specs for them. And the interior, there's 1 interior double doors, 2 doors, and they are 4 foot by 7 foot. You're not going to find 8 by 7 double. You're going to find 4 by 7. So make sure you select 4 foot wide by 7 foot high, and there's 2 of them, and here's the specs for them. And just select appropriate hardware, and interior, just basically anything basic. The exterior have to be egress type. And going back to the beams, they're calling for the main beam, and they're calling for these beams above the overhead doors, and a beam above the mezzanine area, what we call or refer to as the mezzanine. And what is the mezzanine area? The mezzanine area is actually this area here. So in here, this wall, if you remember, if you go back in the video here, this is actually 8 inches block, 10 foot high. On top of it, there will be precast concrete planks, and there is here a double door. There's a machine here, dynamometer here going in, on top, and basically, and it's noisy, so they want to close it up. And there's double doors so they can bring it in or maintain it. And they're calling for W12 by 19 with a 1/4 inch plate underneath. And here are the doors. So this beam here, and this is the other beam that goes over the overhead doors. Now these you will not find in the means book. That's why I am actually letting you know in here, saving you some time and headache, that when you see the M, there's two M14 by 22, one for each overhead doors, those big garage doors. Just use W14 by 26. And the one for that mezzanine, it says 12 by 19. I don't believe you will find 12 by 19. If you do, go for it, but I doubt it, and just use 12 by 22 instead. The same thing for the open web joists. They're calling for 20H7. You will not find those. Just use 20K9. Again, so we're all consistent. And also, these are the bearing plates, not what they call for. Just use those plates. That's the one you're going to find in your book. Again, I know it's challenging, but this is the capstone. You need to think about, things, you need to be more, analytical here. And, if you can't find an exact item, make a decision. Make a decision like, what you want to use. Remember one thing, that you're not really building it at this point. You are estimating it. So as long as you have money to cover that part, that is what's important. Excuse me. So let me go back or go down actually and show you here if you have not actually looked at this yet. But this is the grading criteria, which I will tie it to what I'm talking about here soon. Pretty much 50%, just like we did in the old assignments before, comparison between my numbers and your number. So, and every 1% you're off from my number, you'll be off 2% of that 50. So 50 is just a number. Whether you get lucky, or not, good for you. 15% will be for your Excel sheets. Most of you actually were pretty good in homework number 5. A couple of you, for some reason, they completely ignored that location, category. It is very important. Location is very important. I look at it. And again, remember what I said in the class is that, details, details, details. Review, look at it, preview your printout before you print, so you don't waste, ink and paper and whatnot, and look at it. And then, once you're 100% sure, then you can print it, or you can actually attach it. You're not going to print it, of course, but you're going to attach it. So make sure that you actually do fill those locations. It's a way to communicate with whoever going to use your estimate. Of course, for me, I'm going to be using it and looking at it. And the new category that I wanted you to look at also and pay attention to is that there is 35%, which is basically 35 points, for including all the required items. So if there's a required item that you did not include, you're going to lose 1 point for each item you did not include. So let's say that one of you or somebody did not include door hardware, that's 1 point deduction, or somebody did not include, the beam above the overhead doors, that's 1 point deductions, and so forth. So make sure you look at, the assignment part in here, the one that I just went over, and then here's more to just expedite things and to clarify things. This is from previous history, so I thought, let me summarize it and explain it. Maybe it actually will save a lot of questions back and forth. The loading dock will need to be formed, so there's a forming you need to do and estimate. Building addition is 75 by 75 by 24 foot high. Existing building is only 20 feet. Here's the footing with you. I just explained that. 1 foot 6 wide by 2 foot 4 deep, and there are two number 4 rebars at the bottom. There is no need to form the footings. These will be basically trenched, just like we did in our standard, 16 inches by 8 inches or 2 feet by 1 feet. You dig actually a trench in the ground, and you just basically put the rebar and pour the concrete. Now, as we discussed and did in the class, everything metal, anything steel, the open web joist, beams, lintels, columns, plates, they all might need to be adjusted. Remember that steel is purchased by the weight, and the more weight you have, the more discounts you're going to get, and the less you have. And again, there is basically tiers. We did do that in the class already. You will find it at the end of each of these sections where you find, beams, or where you find the open web joist, and just go through all the items till you reach the point where it says, if ordering less or ordering more, and what the adjustment you have to do. Also here explaining what I just already did, that the north and east exterior walls, they have 8 inches CMU and 4 inches brick. Now, the west, like I said, is 12 inches CMU, so there's no discussion there. But the brick and the block, you have two ways you can do that. One is you can estimate the block by itself as 8 inches exterior CMU, and then you can estimate the brick by itself. Or you can actually do them as an assembly, which is, of course, in my case, for me, I am doing it as an assembly. It's easier, straightforward, it includes everything in it. So I don't have to worry about small pieces. It's faster. So see if you can find that. If you can't, well, hey, you just basically do it separately. But yes, there is an item in means that show you that this is 8 inches CMU and 4 inches of brick, the multi-wyeth, kind of a thing. And pretty much, you can actually estimate that. Now, the interior double doors. Anytime you have double doors, you have to put some kind of a trim between them, or part of the, it's called an astragal. So anytime you see double doors, they should be, otherwise you'll see a crack, and there's no way to actually kind of secure it, between those double doors, unless, of course, they are just passage. In this case, it's not a passage. It's a room that they have to be locked. So make sure you include an astragal. If you don't understand what I'm talking about as an astragal, look it up. You will find it actually online. Now, I already have a question about scuppers and what scuppers are. Scuppers is a form of actually drainage, and the drainage part is basically would look something like that. We are used to having gutters all the time in Northeast Ohio here, but a scuppers actually is another way that is just a direct outlet for water. When you have a parapet wall like this is basically what, kind of like an isometric of it, and it could be something like that. And it could be actually connected to a downspout, like we said here. In our case, there is no downspout. It just basically looks like something like this here. So it's just something to get in. Now, are you going to find it in, means? Most likely not. And basically what you need to do is just put some kind of a numbers. And here's basically what I would recommend. And I am actually connected to my class computer, where we have Sage, and here's the one here. So you might want to pause the video, and I am actually using in division number 2214-26.13, and I'm actually using item 0200. So that's what I would recommend that you actually would use for these scupper locations. Also, there is the overhead doors. The overhead doors, they need to be commercial grade, heavy duty. Here's some specifications to make it easier and more consistent for all of us. Heavy duty 24 gauge. There is no opener or operator, so there is no that electrical thing that opened the doors. There's no need, and I'm not going to include it. So if you include it, you're going to be maybe on the high side. And roofing, here's more detailed about the roofing or the specifications. It's flood coat, smooth surface, 4-ply, 15 pounds asphalt felt, mopped. You need to have the final building cleanup plus the weekly cleanup. I already said that in the beginning there. And again, concrete, slab on grade. It has to be saw cut to control cracking. And we did that. You're not going to find that on any blueprints. It's just more like a specification type. Now, I had a question also, might as well also share it with you, about something called the flashing and counter flashing. And here's what's happening. And before I get there, actually, if you are familiar, I know the civil engineer majors and the architectural majors is you actually have to take rivets. So there is actually a file courtesy of an ex-colleague that basically created this here. You can look at it if you can manipulate to rivet. You open it, and here's the site. And here's that north wall and the west wall and the east wall. And here's a 3D of that building, which makes it helpful to visualize. what we're doing. So in here, this is the 12-inch CMU, and in here, here's that 4 inches brick and 4 inches CMU, and the same thing is here. And here's that south wall that you actually need to worry about. You know, even though it's 3 walls, but since the addition is 24 feet high and the existing building is 20 feet high, there's 4-foot difference that you need to add up. 12 inches block CMU on top of the existing. Now, the existing building has a flashing and gravel stop. So first you need to remove that, and then in here we need to do what we call a flashing and counter flashing to estimate that. In the blueprint itself, they actually call for that, and it is in here. If you have not caught it, you know, you actually, this is basically the height, you know, and in the floor plan, in the roof plan, it says here, remove existing flashing at the parapet at the top of the wall and flash to new wall extension. So you need to flash that, and I have in Blackboard, I have actually details. Here it is here, you know, it's a DWG, you know, it talks about the flashing. So if you have AutoCAD, you can actually look at it, but pretty much it's a 2-piece kind of a flashing and counter flashing, you know, 2 L-shaped, 1 L-shaped piece that goes actually between the vertical wall and the roof, and there is one on top of the vertical wall flashing, you know, to allow for movement. So that's called flashing, the L-shaped, you know, and then the counter flashing, you know, and you can look it up again, you know, information literacy, if you remember, you know, so that's also part of you to figure out and to explore more. In this detail here, at the top of the wall, we will have actually a 2x12. It says treated wood. That's what WD is. And this is what we call the water dam fascia. It's a gravel stop, water dam, whatever you want to call it. You know, you can just use a gravel stop. It's fine. They're calling for 1/2 inch by 8 inches anchor bolts, AB. They are 3 foot on center, just to hold down that plate there. Again, this is one way to fasten and flash the top of the masonry walls with the roof. So you will have around the building, you know, you will have that treated wood. Of course, it's a 2x12 since the walls are 12 inches everywhere. You know, that means you take the parameter here and you include that 2x8 treated wood, and there are anchor bolts actually to hold it down. And this is basically what they're calling for the bearing plate, which is specified into your handout, and that's kind of like pretty much what it is. The doors, they're calling here that all lentils above the doors. And how many exterior doors do we have? We have actually 2 of them. We have one here and we have one here. This one is calling for that beam we already have included, or you include it, just like the overhead doors. But this door in here and this door in here, it will have actually 2 4x4 by 3/8 lentils, double lentils, and we did estimate lentils in the class. You know, again, I know it's not clear. It's 4x4 by 3/8 lentils, so that's what you need also to include, you know, for these doors. And there's also extra lentils or angles. Actually, they're not lentils, but you know, they're the same, you know, type, which is steel angles that will be put in here. 3x3 by 1/4. This will be around all that, you know, dock leveler cavity going around the perimeter to protect it from cracking. And there are 3x3 by 1/4 going around, you know, all the areas into the edges of that dock leveler. So in here, so you'll have one here in the top, one in here, one in here, and then one in here, and then one going down in here, about 2 feet down, and then here 2 feet down. And again, also here, you know, if I missed that part, you know, so all of this is to protect if somebody ding it or a truck actually, you know, comes close and or something hits it, typically concrete edges are vulnerable to cracking and chipping. So they're putting that as a protection from cracking. So make sure also you include that. And if you have any questions or you need any more clarifications, feel free to contact me. As I said, I'm asking all of you, this is individual effort. So I hope that you would honor this part here, and we're all professionals. So, have any questions, please feel free to email me. And if I think it's actually something worth sharing, I will definitely explain it to you and share it with the rest of the class for the benefit of the class. I hope you will benefit out of this and looking forward to hearing from you.